Namo Amida Butsu. For anyone new to this channel or this topic, that means I entrust myself to the Buddha of limitless light, Amida Buddha, that guy. Also, for anyone new, I recommend you checking out my introductory video on this topic. This video is going to assume that someone has a fair amount of familiarity with Jodo Shinshu, with this particular form of Buddhism. Day 11. It's hard to fathom, really. It's hard to fathom because I've had a long journey with Jodo Shinshu, which maybe I'll share about sometime. But today was a hard day. Having decided to go on this path, I've seen some really uncomfortable truth about myself, some of which I've shared. I've seen some very uncomfortable truth about the life I was living, and made some very radical changes already. And there's a lot of pain yesterday, and not as much, but a fair amount of pain today around some of those changes involving shifting of friendships and questioning whether some friendships are still compatible. See, I live in a California spiritual town, and what I'm starting to realize is that there's a whole spiritual culture out there, and it has many facets: non-duality, raw foods, yoga, ecstatic dance, growth, healing, learning. Now, I'm not saying that all of the things I just mentioned, plant medicines, I'm not saying that all these things are bad, but there is a certain culture that has built up around them and a certain mindset. And I've become painfully aware of it in the last couple of days, both in myself, how I've been living, and in people around me. And it's basically kind of just this endless journey of constantly seeking. And it's, most of those things, and again, none of them are bad. I went to a yoga class today, and I'm not knocking any of those things, but what I am knocking is the mentality behind it, of this like constantly seeking and never feeling whole. And there's kind of like this constant chasing after the next high vibe, or like, but the piece that I'm really zeroing in on is this feeling of like, well, I'm going to heal everything. And I've lived that way for years. I didn't realize it, but I was living Vajrayana Buddhism. Like, I'm going to become a Buddha in this lifetime before I die. And it drove me crazy. It drove me to the brink of suicide multiple times. So I'm not opposed to self-improvement or eating well, and neither is Jodo Shinshu. But, Jodo Shinshu is fundamentally about finding our being held by Amida, to the point where we're not constantly seeking, whether it's materially or spiritually. That's what I've realized, is a lot of spirituality is just disguised materialism, like this trying to get. And, I'm speaking about myself. That's how I've lived most of my life. And paradoxically, it creates a very insidious kind of selfishness. And I'm recognizing this in myself and people around me is, so it's interesting. My Dharma mentor, Paul Roberts, his blog was called the Shin Ugly Blog. And I never understood. I was like, why ugly? Well, because part of this path is recognizing our inner ugg, our inner ugliness. And so today has been a good day. Yesterday was awesome. I just felt so much connection to Amita and so much light and joy. And today was not that. And there were plenty of wonderful experiences today. And so I'm saying goodbye to that old spiritual self, which was my whole identity and my whole life was being a spiritual seeker. I'm happy to say I'm becoming a spiritual finder. I don't even like the word spiritual anymore. And so I haven't really introduced myself on this channel, and I will at some point. So what I'm doing here is I'm just putting aside all of that to the best of my ability and diving into Jodo Shinshu for 40 days. And at the end of the 40 days, if I decide that Jodo Shinshu isn't the path for me, and I can't even fathom that being the case, I cannot fathom that at this point. It feels like I have found what I've been looking for my whole life, this path and this relationship with Amitabha. There's no way I could go back to that crap. Sorry, I'm not sorry. Again, if yoga helps you feel good, go do yoga. And I love acupuncture, and raw food's a great way to eat. But there's this other thing of, Buddhism puts it right in our face. Like, sure, go eat healthy and, have spiritual experiences, and you're going to grow old, get sick, and die and lose everything. And, unless you're a ridiculously virtuous person, there's a good chance your next lifetime, isn't going to be as fortunate as this human life. And even if you do make spiritual progress, which you take into the next life, there's always the chance of retrogression. Not the chance, according to Shinrin and Nagarjuna, the almost certainty that all your spiritual progress will be lost. That was the wake-up call for me. So, thank you so much for dropping by this channel, and thanks for accompanying me on this journey. And the long and short of it is, friends, there's a lot of spiritual bullshit out there. A lot. I would say most of it is bullshit. And sadly, there's a lot of bullshit in the Jodo Shinshu and the Shin community. A lot of what's being taught isn't about Shinjin, isn't about Amida Buddha and being reborn in the Pure Land. It's a bummer. And welcome to Samsara. That's a bummer. Samsara is a bummer. But it's, according to the Buddhist teachings, it's not too much of a bummer. It's a bummer. It's enough of a bummer to wake us up, and then to awaken the most holy, sacred desire there is, the aspiration for Buddhahood. Thanks so much for joining in. Much love.